There's been a lot of trade speculation surrounding Jalen Ramsey. The Los Angeles Rams, they're looking to free up some cap room. They recently released star linebacker Bobby Wagner, despite being one of the best linebackers in the game last season. And they could potentially look to move on from Jalen Ramsey to free up some more cap room, along with acquiring some draft capital in exchange for his services. Jalen Ramsey, he currently is 28 years old right now. Some of you guys may feel like his play has slightly fallen off, but I still believe that he's arguably the best cornerback in the game. And even if you push back against that, I think that we can all agree that he still is top 5 at his position. So if the Rams truly are looking to move on from Jalen Ramsey, what are the best trade destinations for him? He has a cap hit this year of $25.2 million. In 2024, he'll have a cap hit of $26.7 million. I think if you are the Las Vegas Raiders, you should be the first team in line making phone calls to acquire Jalen Ramsey. They've been drafting cornerbacks for how many years, and they've still yet to find a half-decent one? Not just cornerbacks, but defensive backs in general. Like, the last time I can remember the Raiders having a good defensive back in their secondary was Charles Woodson. And if you want to go back a little bit further, how many of you guys are going to remember this name? Nnamdi Asomugha. Nnamdi Asomugha and Charles Woodson have been the two best defensive backs that the Raiders have had on their defense for over the last decade. If you go and you get Jalen Ramsey, he is going to be the best cornerback that the Raiders have had probably in a very long time. You already have a pretty good defensive line with Max Crosby and Chandler Jones manning the edge, getting after the passer. Now all you need is a true shutdown cornerback, and that's what Jalen Ramsey can give you. And the Raiders have the money to afford his salary. They currently rank 3rd in the NFL in available cap space. So the money really shouldn't be that big of a problem. And the Raiders and Josh McDaniels are trying to win right now. And when you're trying to win right now, you got to go ahead and get good football players when they're available, especially when you struggle to find success at drafting and signing good cornerbacks. I mean, the cornerbacks that they have right now that are expected to hit free agency are Anthony Averett, Rocky Sin, and Sidney Jones. I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that Jalen Ramsey is way better than those guys. So if you are the Las Vegas Raiders, you most definitely should be making some phone calls right now for Jalen Ramsey's services. And not to mention, Jalen Ramsey wanted to be a Raider. It was his dream to play for the Silver and Black. So why not make Jalen Ramsey's dreams come true? I know the Raiders aren't the Make-A-Wish Foundation, but why not go ahead and get somebody who wants to play for your organization? The second team that I think should trade for Jalen Ramsey are the Minnesota Vikings. They have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator now. We know he likes to run an aggressive style defense. And last year, do you know who was the best cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings? It was old man Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson was getting carved up by Isaiah Hodgins. Not once, but twice. I would never thought that I would live to see the day when Patrick Peterson is getting routed up by a guy who was a former practice squad wide receiver. And no disrespect to Isaiah Hodgins. It's just like, damn, Patrick Peterson, like how the mighty have fallen. And if you're Minnesota and you're trying to compete for a Super Bowl, you definitely can't do it with old man Pat Pete being your best option at cornerback. If I'm Minnesota, I'm giving the LA Rams anything that they're asking for when it comes to getting Jalen Ramsey, because you got to get cornerback taken care of. Okay, the backing of your secondary, I don't really know. I think it's okay. But when it comes to cornerback, you have to get that situated. And if you go ahead, you get Jalen Ramsey, and you can pair him up with another solid cornerback via free agency, I think that your defense is going to be tremendously improved, because one of the biggest weaknesses in Minnesota's defense last year was the fact that their secondary was a huge liability. I mean, their secondary could not stop a nosebleed. They were getting dotted up by Daniel freaking Jones. Isaiah Hodgins, how many of you guys knew who the hell Isaiah Hodgins was before he played against your defense? Because if you didn't know who Isaiah Hodgins was before playing the Minnesota Vikings, you damn sure know who he is now. If you are the Minnesota Vikings, after watching your best cornerback last season getting routed up by a guy named Isaiah Hodgins, you got to go ahead and upgrade that cornerback. Go ahead and get you Jalen Ramsey, okay? And also Patrick Peterson is going to be an upcoming free agent. There's no use bringing him back. He's old. It's time to move on. And even if you do want to bring back Patrick Peterson, he still shouldn't be your number one cornerback at this state of his career. Okay, now the Minnesota Vikings, they are under the cap by $20 million, but let's just act like that isn't a thing because the New Orleans Saints were able to get the deal with Derek Carr done despite being under the cap. So the Minnesota Vikings, they should be able to find a way to get Jalen Ramsey in there despite their current cap situation. Another team that I think will be a fantastic fit for Jalen Ramsey are the Cincinnati Bengals. Their cornerback, too, on the opposite side of Chidobe Awuzie, has been Eli freaking Apple. And come on, bro. We all know that Eli Apple, the dude isn't all that good. So you go from Eli Apple to Jalen Ramsey. You pair him up with Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, one of the best slot cornerbacks in the game. That's arguably the best cornerback trio in the NFL. And then you're playing in the AFC North, where you have quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson. I don't know if it's safe to mention Kenny Pickett, but I do think that Kenny Pickett is coming around. You're going to need some good play from your secondary. And for Cincinnati, you already are about to lose Jesse Bates and Von Bell. So why not, if you're going to lose two talented safeties, why not go ahead and try to acquire a big name cornerback to blossom your defense? Your defense already is pretty good with the fact that you have one of the best defensive coordinators in the game. So you pair up Jalen Ramsey with Mike Hilton and Chidobe Awuzie. That Cincinnati Bengals defense looks really scary. Another team that I think needs to be in the market for Jalen Ramsey services are the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this is probably going to be the first one that some of you guys may disagree with me on. You're probably going to say, JT, why are we trading for a guy who's 28 years old? We need to be getting younger. And I understand that, but the Atlanta Falcons at the same time, what are you trying to do? How long is this rebuild going to last? Are you trying to rebuild for the next decade and a half? Or are you trying to actually put a team on the field that can actually win one of the worst divisions in the NFL? You're second in the NFL in available cap space. You have A.J. Terrell. You pair him up with Jalen Ramsey. And then you can go ahead and maybe cut Casey Hayward, who would save you $5 million. Or you can keep him, move him to the slot, which I think he's much better in the slot than he is playing outside. Or you could cut Casey Hayward, re-sign Isaiah Oliver for a cheaper deal, and move him to the slot or keep him in the slot. Let him be your cornerback 3. And then you can worry about the other positions of need, such as giving Grady Jarrett some help, finding some help at pass rush, getting some more talent in the back end of that safety. But getting Jalen Ramsey will be a good starting point for the Atlanta Falcons, improving their defense. And honestly, Atlanta really should be trying to win this upcoming season. I really don't understand why they would continue to try to rebuild. I think they're in the perfect situation with how this division is right now. If they go ahead, they get Jalen Ramsey, I think that this defense is tremendously better compared to what it was without Jalen Ramsey. Him and A.J. Terrell would be one of the best cornerback duos in the NFL. Now, the last team that I think should trade for Jalen Ramsey are the Dallas Cowboys. Now, compared to the other teams that I mentioned, I don't think they need Jalen Ramsey's services as much as a team like the Atlanta Falcons or the Minnesota Vikings or even the Raiders, but cornerback 2 was a problem for Dallas, a huge problem for Dallas. Okay, you had Kelvin Joseph there, Anthony Brown there. It's just, you need to go ahead and find another good cornerback to pair up with Trayvon Diggs. Now, the Dallas Cowboys have some salary cap issues that they have to solve. But at the same time, Jerry Jones, if there's a good player out there, we know that he's not going to hesitate to go out there and get him. And if you pair up Jalen Ramsey with Trayvon Diggs and the fact that you have Dan Quinn as your defensive coordinator, Dallas defense is probably going to end up remaining one of the best in the NFL next season. Hell, they probably could end up taking the title away from the San Francisco 49ers next season. I mean, their defense, they are going to be losing a couple of guys to free agency, but I still think that your defense improves with the addition of Jalen Ramsey. You got Trayvon Diggs, then you're going to have Jalen Ramsey on the opposite side. Plus the fact that your secondary on the back end is really good. Jalen Ramsey would make the Dallas Cowboys secondary arguably the best in the NFL. And those are the teams that I feel should trade for Jalen Ramsey and the best trade destinations for Jalen Ramsey.